power on.
It's TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast.
Woo, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here for you, baby. Well, you know how this goes. I am not alone, but my man Rob and I are here for some TIE Fighter Renegades. Rob, welcome back, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, always. So we've got some business to get into in this episode. We're going to open it up with talking about a little business going on at Disney. One of the rare times I think we can talk about something positive happening over there. But maybe we'll get into some more positivity around Disney, because we're also going to get into a review of the first 5 episodes of Star Wars Bad Batch. Was it worth the time, or, is it something that reflects what we might have done in the toilet a few minutes ago? I don't know, but we'll find out. We'll get my thoughts, Rob's thoughts, and of course, you can always email or contact the show via the Sovryn Tech email address, questions@sovereigntech.com, or you can actually go to the Sovryn Tech Telegram group and ask questions there if you want. Believe me, we do keep an eye out there for those sorts of things, or if you ever want to share your thoughts, we're happy to read them on the show. And the show, again, being TIE Fighter Renegades, so we might as well talk about some Star Wars. And we're also, by the way, I didn't mention it, we are also not just Star Wars, but we're going to finish up our ranking of Star Trek within the Star Trek franchise. In the last episode, we had done a ranking of the Star Trek movies, which Rob had some, in my opinion, very interesting choices. I'll put it that way. And you certainly want to go back and listen to those. But we'll see how interesting it gets when we rank the television series in this episode, minus any fan fiction. And when we say minus any fan fiction, that means, frankly, anything that wasn't under like Rick Berman's purview or Gene Roddenberry's. But anyway, we'll save that for later. But why don't we open this up with some business? And the business is coming out of IndieWire, and this is a story fresh as of May 21st, 2021, though maybe it's not so fresh as far as when this all happened. But Dave Filoni, as Rob often calls the heir to the empire, that being George Lucas's empire, is now executive creative director of Lucasfilm. And I put a link in the show notes if you want to read more about this. Now, there's an interesting thing, is that in some of the tweets about this, it's saying that he's an executive creative director at Lucasfilm, which would seem to insinuate that there's more than one. Or, maybe that there's not more than one, and this is putting him in a very, very high level. Which, I mean, Rod, let me ask you. I know this doesn't come as a surprise to you that they would, put him in this position. But do you think anything's really changed here? I mean, it seems like he's just been given title to me, but what do you think?
I don't think anything's changed in terms of, what's going to happen in the future. I think this is definitely a reflection of kind of the announcement that we got last year of all of these shows, which definitely seem to be largely tied into Filoni's, storytelling for Star Wars.
Right. You're meaning like Acolyte and
the New Republic Rangers,
right,
and Ahsoka and the Book of Boba Fett, and this all seems to be tied into a Filoniverse, if you will. And
sure.
This kind of reflects that. And basically, the way I see this is this puts, Dave Filoni as basically the Kevin Feige of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. I don't think I've seen or heard a peep from Filoni, even though he's certainly a man of a few words. He keeps his mouth or his lips tightly sealed, it seems, under his big black hat. And I haven't heard him say anything about High Republic. I have no idea what he thinks about it, if he's even read the stuff. And I'd love to hear, get his take on everything. As far as this larger Filoniverse, I think we're going to have somewhat of a conversation around that when we get into Bad Batch, because some interesting players have become involved, as we saw in more recent episodes of Bad Batch. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't necessarily think that anything has changed. I think that there were certain characters we knew that Filoni has had control of that, he has to give the okay on as far as what happens with them, particularly Ahsoka. But I mean, again, no surprise here, but I feel like he was already doing this anyway. Maybe not so much with the sequel trilogy, but just about everything else. It seems like he had a pretty iron fist involved, which, I mean, I'm glad that he did.
Right.
So,
although some people on Twitter have been like, wishfully thinking that somehow Dave Filoni is going to use the World Between Worlds to erase the sequel trilogy, which is a bunch of bullshit in my opinion. Not that I would be like 100% opposed to that, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, it doesn't need to, because the way like that the Mandalorian was tying in so well with like Snoke, right? Or, with the sequel trilogy anyway. As long as you give us more history, we can buy what's happening in the sequel trilogy. Like, but you just got to give us more you got to give everything that's happening there more weight. And with the Mandalorian, at least he's building that up, and I'm sure he will with other properties as well. Yeah. So, I mean, this is only a good thing, in my opinion. I assume you would say the same, Rob.
Oh, absolutely. Of course. I mean, like I said, I call him the heir to the empire, the Lucasfilm empire. So, this is all appropriate and good. And, I mean, apparently Kathleen Kennedy was the one who promoted him. So this kind of, throws a monkey wrench in some people's theories about there being a Lucasfilm civil war.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the funny thing, so Filoni's the guy who really doesn't seem to care about the dollars and cents of this. I mean, he just wants to make like, really great Star Wars.
Right.
Which seems to be, an exceptionally rare thing in what is frankly now it's not a duopoly, but it's a duopoly now. Thanks Amazon for buying MGM for a few billion. Now everything, like you said earlier, Rob, now everything's just Sony and Disney. Like fucking everything is Sony and Disney. Hollywood's turned into Republicans and Democrats. And that's worked out so well for government, right? Oh boy.
Well, it's not exactly like Sony and Disney are like total enemies either. I mean, like they work together on Spider-Man. So
yeah, they're really, it makes you wonder sometimes behind the scenes, right? It's like, oh, they're all buddy, just like those Republicans and Democrats. Oh yeah, they're enemies. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. So I see this as a good thing because you got a guy that's a genuine creative who's at the top there. And you know what? Like if you've got a bunch of people under him, white collar idiots that, just make sure that the spreadsheets look good at the end of the day, but you let him make his calls. Awesome. Then fine. At least we'll get, if not great Star Wars, we'll get, halfway decent Star Wars that still plays within the, what we've come to expect, say, from Filoni or George Lucas, more so than what we've gotten from the likes of others in recent years. So I guess with that said, unless you have anything else to talk about on that, Rob?
No.
Yeah, so I guess with that said, we'll get into the latest creation, the latest bit of content, because, they actually, studios don't call this stuff movies or series anymore. They just call it content when they do their calls. There's probably
like
something
feeding us something.
Yeah. There's a lot to extrapolate from the fact that they don't call it, again, no matter what it is, they just call it all content. And you gotta wonder about that. But regardless, so the latest to come out in the Star Wars universe as a regular series is Star Wars Bad Batch, which started on Star Wars Day on May the 4th. And we're 5 episodes deep now into this. And I will say spoiler alerts here. So if you haven't watched all 5 of these, first off, go ahead and pause this and you can go and watch them. But second off, before you pause, feel free to watch them at like 2.5 to 3x. You might not miss anything. No. Okay. It's not. It's really not bad. So Star Wars Bad Batch. So we're 5 episodes deep on this. This is a series that basically picks up right after the Clone Wars. I mean, right after episode, or like even during the events of episode 3, this picks up because we get the speech from Palpatine of creating, the Galactic Empire. I think, we can get into the details around this, but let me ask you, Rob, we'll open it up. I mean, what do you think of this so far?
Yeah, it's a continuation of the Clone Wars, which I'm perfectly happy with.
I mean, it's basically season 8, right? Doesn't it feel like it?
Yeah. I mean, and I mean, admittedly, the Bad Batch episodes weren't my favorite part of season 7, but I'll take this over 90% of what's on TV these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with those sentiments. I mean, it's not like, it's not blowing me away like maybe Mandalorian was.
Right.
But I like it.
Yeah.
I'm laughing, I'm enjoying it. Like I'm digging what's being put down. We're getting characters that don't have to be as good as they are. I think don't have to be as funny as they are. They could be just frankly ridiculous. Like Wrecker could just be, a totally cliche character, but I actually think he's pretty funny. I was wondering, we talked because we reviewed in the last episode, we reviewed the trailer for this, and I basically said, well, this is just going to be the A-Team in space. And I was actually wondering about 4 episodes in, I'm like, well, is this really going to be the A-Team in space? What do they got going on here? Or is this going to be something completely different? Because I did expect the show to be also fairly straight comedy, and it's not that. It's funny, but it's not straight comedy. It's actually very serious, often enough. But when we got to episode 5 of it, finally I was like, oh yeah, no, we are getting the A-Team in space.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to get paid for the jobs. They're going to take the jobs. And again, I have no problem with that. I'm totally fine with that because I think the A-Team's, it's not something that you can do for a long time, but I don't expect the show to go more than 5 seasons. I'd be amazed if it went 5 seasons. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's same here. I expect this to be like a 2, maybe 3 season show.
Yeah. And that's, and if you're going to run with the A-Team formula, you can get away with that for 3 seasons. And it's enjoyable.
Not that there isn't a lot of things that they could explore. I mean, one of the things that I really conceptually like about the show is that we get to see, what happens to the clones after the Clone Wars.
Right.
Because that's not really something that has been explored in depth in really any of the comic books or movies or anything.
Yeah. And we're also getting, as of episode 4, we're getting introduction to, okay, wait, how do the clones get phased out?
Right.
Like, how do we get new stormtroopers? And you start to see that there's a bit of a mixture, as far as like, okay, it appears like Tarkin himself says, no, clones are still going to have a purpose. But then this other admiral guy that's working with Tarkin is really on board with bringing in special forces. I thought it was very interesting that the regular humans that they bring on, not the clones, they have a conscience. They have a bit of morality.
Right. That's something I was going to mention too. And the fact that, it's in fact the clones, specifically Crosshair, that's kind of like setting the bar for how ruthless they need to be in order to step up and be the stormtroopers that we, know today.
Yeah, even more than stormtroopers, right? Because I think it was pretty apparent, like they made him look like a death trooper. He had the green visor,
right? The
whole thing, and he's probably gonna because we get that point where the Kaminoans are saying, "Oh, we've got to have like this new force that's going to really intrigue Tarkin," and somehow I get the sense that they're going to use Crosshair to like be the template for Death Troopers. Just a guess.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I mean the Death Troopers are always been kind of weird. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that even in the Rebellion era, if all the Death Troopers are in fact clones of some sort, because they talk in that weird battle language. Mm-hmm. And I think it's in the Vader comics, they actually some of them get mechanized.
Yeah, And in, I think, the Rogue One visual guide, they talk about, or dictionary, whatever it was, they talk about how the Death Troopers like all have to be over, like they're huge, like they're actually really large guys. Like they have to be, or I think some of them can be women too, though, right? Because in Rebels, I think for some reason I was thinking one of them was a gal. But anyway, they're all a certain height, like they have to be above 6 feet or something like that, and they have very stringent restrictions on what can be a Death Trooper. So yeah, I could see that too. What you're saying, that actually all the Death Troopers are clones. It reminds me of, if you remember from the Power of the Force action figure collection back in the 90s. They had like G.I. Joe did, where they had the cards on the back that explained more about the characters.
Right.
And when you bought the Stormtrooper figure, it brought up saying that there are those that speculate the Stormtroopers are all clones. And they made it clear on the back of that card saying that, it's speculation, but now it kind of plays into that idea that's been around for a while, that Stormtroopers were all clones. Not that anybody was planning this since 97. I'm not claiming that at all, but just that, that legend, now has a little bit of basis. I feel like that I worked well in my head canon anyway.
Right. Well, that's here again, very much Filoni's MO is to, take elements from quote legends and, and bring them into the canon universe is just that,
right.
Sort of like the barroom canon.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So he wrote the first episode of this, and I guess we can get into the, like, kind of go episode by episode. But the first episode of it was that double length? That was like an hour, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I was really surprised when I watched this. I thought it was great. Again, I was laughing. I was really surprised at how serious it was. Because when you watch the trailer, it sounded like it was just going to be, kind of almost slapstick sort of comedy, but not really. This was dealing with, good soldiers follow orders, there are some really deep themes, being laid out here.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, that was my expectation, because I mean, if you're dealing with Order 66, you can't make light of that. I mean, there's no way you can do that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and they're picking right up talking about the chips implanted in the clones that, program them for Order 66 and everything. Now this is something there are a few complaints that people have made. Some I think are justified. Others, I don't get what the hell exactly they're complaining about. One of the complaints is with, we get to experience the early life of Caleb Dune. And that being, of course, Kanan later on. And in fact, they even got Freddie Prinze Jr. to, basically have a 10-year-old sound like a 50-year-old, but whatever.
that was a bit odd.
Yeah, it was kind of off, but fine. Okay. I know why they did it. And I'm glad Freddie's getting a paycheck. Believe me, I think the guy, he's dynamite. But something I know you had said to me when we were talking before recording, I think it was like last week or something, but you were saying how, this really, because you get to see the moment where, was it Master Balaba or something like that? You get to see where she gets killed, and Caleb, experiences this. Now, we got that in the Kanan comic books, which was a tremendous comic book series, miniseries. But it seems like the way that the events happened in Bad Batch and the way they happened in that comic book don't exactly gel. I mean,
no.
You got anything on that, Rob?
Not at all. I mean, in a lot of ways, for me, this just kind of like puts the nail in the coffin about how important in canon the comic books are. And it's kind of appropriate that, that Dave Filoni's in the position that he is now, because George would do this all the time, where he would basically throw a monkey wrench in the expanded universe stuff because they're his characters. Right. And that's the way I feel about this is like, these are Dave's characters. He can do whatever the hell with them that he wants.
Right. Yeah, he's the ultimate say in it. And I'm with you. I like that. I want That's what I need with a franchise. I need that mind at the top.
Yeah.
That he said, no, it's like, right. I need, there needs to be the person at the top who he or she or whatever, says, this is what's canon, like that's nice. We can say, well, this is canon, blah, blah, blah. But we need the guy who can put down the hammer and say, no, I'll fucking tell you what's canon and what's not.
Right. Well, not only that is you get somebody who's actually able to make real decisions.
Yes.
Because Brian and I's biggest complaint about all of the extraneous Star Wars content from the last few years is that it doesn't really have any teeth. You read these books and you read these comics, and nothing really all that big on the level of, say, a Thrawn trilogy happens.
Right. Unless
there's somebody who is able to make, major decisions behind it.
Right. Which we'll get into that with episode 4, which was probably the top episode of the series so far, where there's a lot of connective tissue and you're seeing some vision, certainly from Filoni, I think, in this. So there's that it kind of calls bullshit on the comics, and we might as well go back to how Star Wars used to be pre-Disney, where we had the multiple levels of canon.
Right.
Like movies were at the top, and then everything just kind of went, as you go down.
Yeah. Give me F canon. All four.
Right. Give me F canon, G canon, I mean, it used to be like, it could almost be fun. It's like, so what level of canon do you pay attention to? It's like, oh, I go all the way to G, It's like, I'm just a D canon. Oh, all right. So at least you watch the cartoons. Okay. No. But anyway, so there's that criticism to be had. The other criticism, and I think this speaks to the series as a whole, but it was definitely the first one, or I heard this a lot after the first episode came out. And so I kind of want to get it in here, is that a lot of people are saying, okay, it's not bad, but why do we need this? Like that's like, people just seem to be they're not trashing it. I don't really hear anybody being negative about it. They're not negative. They're just apathetic to where it's like, okay, it's Clone Wars season 8. So, and I don't care. For me, that surprises me because I'm like, well, why wouldn't we want more Clone Wars? If that's effectively what we're getting here. But that seems to be the general gist that I get from people. It's just that they don't understand why this is getting made. They didn't ask for it. They don't need it. It's almost like the response to Solo. Go ahead.
I've seen that. And honestly, the first place I saw it was from, an industry insider, a media person.
Okay.
So I don't know that I can really take that opinion that seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just, I'll say it. It's a manufactured opinion.
Well, I've heard it from people who like us call bullshit on the corporatism.
Okay.
So,
I mean, what Star Wars fan that watched the Clone Wars doesn't want more Clone Wars?
So, well, I'll give one example. So there's the guy from Retroblasting, right? And he admitted that he loved Clone Wars, but he feels like, I don't know. He's more of a Debbie Downer than I am. So
yeah. I'm so, well, see, there's people too that love the Clone Wars, but for some reason hate Rebels. And I just think those people, I'm sorry, those people
he
are
is
silly.
One of those.
They're silly. Those people are silly.
Yeah. Cause that shows Rebels is fantastic.
Phenomenal. It is.
Yeah, really. And this is definitely setting up as a bridge between that. I thought that having, despite any complaints around Caleb's appearance and the events that encircled it, I thought attaching it to Rebels right from the first episode was a win. I was like, yeah, fucking right. Like, let's, this is a franchise. This is a saga. This has connective tissue. I thought that was a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, if that's your opinion, fine. We agree to disagree, but I have a hard time taking it seriously.
Yeah, but because I mean, I agree with your statement. Like, if you loved Clone Wars, why are you complaining about this? Like, we're getting more.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with it going for 10 years or however long we're going to get out of this. I think that's awesome. Yeah, so other than that, throughout the first episode, we do get some Tarkin, which I thought Tarkin's appearances overall in Bad Batch have been very well done, not overdone by any means. He's not a crutch to the series. Things are entertaining without him, which could have been a concern, but they're certainly even better with him there, and doing his thing. It works.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that they've always used Tarkin in the animated stuff very sparingly, but like you said, whenever they do, it just does kind of dial things up to 11.
Yes. Yeah, and I felt that it's been that way, because the beautiful thing with Tarkin is he has that reputation where he's as bad an ass as Vader and the Emperor because he's bossed around Vader in the past. And you know how much the Emperor respects him. So you can have that other without having to overdo, bringing in, I mean, even though it's awesome when they come in, without having to bring in Vader, without having to bring in the Emperor, you've got a character that carries just as much cachet.
Right.
And so everything gets taken really seriously. Did you feel that this had a really serious tone? I mean, am I crazy in thinking that?
No, but I expected it. So
you expected it. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Because I didn't, but you did. Okay.
Right. Yeah, because like I said, right from the start, I mean, like we saw in the trailers that there were going to be elements of Order 66, and like I said, there's no way you can make slapstick out of that. I don't think anybody would tolerate that, and I don't think Dave Filoni in 100 billion years would ever think to do something like that.
Not after watching The Mandalorian. There's no way he's going to take a military issue and make a joke out of it. Because when you've got was it Bill Burr or whatever? when you've got him blasting an officer like right in the face of the table. We're gonna take these issues pretty seriously. So I'm still. So here's the thing though. And this kind of expands a little bit beyond Bad Batch. I know, and if someone wants to call me on the carpet about it, I'll find the issue of Star Wars Insider where it was. And I'm pretty sure it's in the same issue, and this is all pre-Disney, where they talked about the origin of General Grievous, where they had like a short story about that. I know in that issue, they talked about how the reason that the clones obeyed Order 66 had nothing to do with the chip. There was no chip in their head. That story, or not story, but that article made it abundantly clear. It's just, that's the nature of soldiers. You get them to a point where no matter what you order them, as crazy as it may sound, they do it. And I thought that explanation was kind of BS, but then at the same time, I'm like, well, it's a little bit better than the chip in the head. How do you feel about the chip in the head overall? I guess I want to ask you, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Even though the clones are literally all, they're clones. They're all identical. Mm-hmm. They're grown and literally programmed to be obedient. And I don't just mean by the chip. I mean when you watch, Attack of the Clones and you see, all these kids in a line getting their training and they're got this weird headgear on and they're plugged into these computers. Yeah, they're being programmed on how to be soldiers. Mm-hmm. That being said, when we see in the Clone Wars the more human element to them and that mm-hmm. they have a relationship with the Jedi, sometimes it's fraught, but sometimes it's one of genuine respect. Mm-hmm. In fact, that seems to be the case more often than not, at least from what we see in the Clone Wars. I just don't see how that you could, order somebody to kill basically all their generals on the command of some supreme ruler, who was never really intended to be a supreme ruler to begin with, mm-hmm. because you were still technically a republic at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, and I'll ask you this question just, and if you don't want to answer it, that's fine.
Sure.
I don't have the military perspective. You do.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
If you got an order to from the president of the United States directly, where he sends out a video and says, "Hey, kill all your commanders," would you have followed it?
Not that quickly, I'll tell you that much. Like
exactly.
There would be so much confirmation on that order. Like we couldn't, there's no way we could just receive even video of the president or something, or whoever. And they'll say, look, you got to go do this now or we're all dead or something like that. No, there's going to be confirmation. See, but that's the thing. So here's, I guess, and as you were talking, like it made me think about this, is that I feel like, so here's where George Lucas got it right in Attack of the Clones in episode 2. He got it right in that the purpose of the military, and I'm speaking as, again, like you said, someone I was in the Army, I went through, I know the whole process and all this. You have to strip away the individuality. Okay. Like you've got it. That's the whole purpose when you first show up for basic training. Okay. For me personally, and this won't take long to tell, for me personally, like I was all on board, ready to go. I won't go into the reasons why, but I was all on board, ready to go. And like, I have been shaving my head forever anyway, but like I made sure my head was shaved. I mean, I made sure I looked exactly like, like the model soldier when I first was at Fort Benning in Georgia, showing up for basic training. And would you believe it? I got yelled at by the sergeants there. And they said, who told you to shave your head? We're all shaving our head. Like, that's what we're all supposed to do when we're going into basic. But this is the thing. Even if the drill sergeants have to make shit up if they have to tell you that you're doing something wrong, so that, and that's part of how they break down, a lot of your individual reasoning.
Well, not only that, I could see them being upset about it because it's the act itself of them removing your hair, not you removing your hair, them removing your hair.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all psychological. So, but I know for a fact that they tell those drill sergeants, like you find the smallest, you find something, to rip on them about, about with the recruits about. And I feel like George Lucas in episode 2 was really in Attack of the Clones, I should say, was really trying to show that a military only functions when you strip away individuality, and using the clones for that army was an extreme kind of science fiction-y way of illustrating that fact that there cannot be individuality. So here, and it was well done. That's why I don't hate that movie as much as some Star Wars fans do. I get why they don't like it, but like when you've been in the military, you do get a little more. I think you get a little more of what George Lucas was trying to say. Now, I think what happened with Clone Wars, and you see it in The Mandalorian, I think you see it in most of Filoni's work. I don't know that Filoni was ever in the military, but if he wasn't, he has somebody really close to him who knows what the fuck they're talking about. Because in Clone Wars, there's so many elements that are just too good. In The Mandalorian, there are so many elements that are just too close to home on how it worked, particularly even just in, the most recent Iraq war, that somebody there has to know how it goes. So I think Filoni displays a more accurate version of what the military is. Or how he shows like the real world, and George Lucas was kind of showing a more perfect world, a more
idealized.
A more idealized version, but idealized to the negative, which is fine.
Right.
And so that's what I think is going on, because yes, like no soldier like has their BDU in BDUs in tip top shape, when they would all have like specific designs or whatever. I mean, especially when you're on the battlefield, like you're lucky if everybody's wearing the same damn uniform. So how it got implemented with the clones like Rex and even the Bad Batch and so on. But, within the Clone Wars, that's more realistic. And yes, you basically would need a chip in the head to instantly follow some order that you received at that level. Absolutely. Right. You would need that, even in today's military, because in, like US Army code, you are taught to question orders. You really are. Or at least it's written down that you're supposed to. Okay. But because, and that's a byproduct of the Cold War, where you could get bullshit orders and they could be, coming from the commies, quote unquote. Right. So I get what George Lucas is trying to say. At the same time, Filoni is showing a much more accurate, a more realistic version of what the military is actually like. Clones are not. But yeah. There's a part of me. Go ahead.
There's a really interesting thing here in that it may be the greatest failure of the clone army in that they presumed on the assumption that, oh, well, we don't have to worry about stripping them of their individuality because they're all the same. They don't have individual personalities.
Right.
But the thing is like their experiences and interactions, especially with the Jedi, kind of like it's kind of like, you start at the bottom, there's nowhere to go but up in terms of developing an a personality and an individuality. And they did that. We see that through, the clone troopers customizing their armor and all this kind of stuff. The stormtroopers don't have any of that.
Right.
That doesn't happen in the Empire.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, and so I guess there's a part of me that, as stupid as it kind of was, or not stupid, it's not stupid, as unrealistic as it was for the reason that the clones obeyed Order 66 was just because they were so trained to obey, not because of a chip. I think a part of me likes that better because it speaks to what I think George Lucas was trying to make this blanket statement against armies, which is really clear, which is why his dream society of the Republic didn't have an army, right? Originally, like, there hasn't been a standing army for however many generations or blah, blah, blah. So I think I like that better. That it's just this, like, really this ripping on of the concept of a military in itself. But then at the same time, the message that might be better for our world, if there's going to be any kind, not that I expect Star Wars to preach to me, it does, but I really just want it to entertain me. But I do like Filoni's message a little more in that, okay, no, guess what, troopers, disobey, like that was the message we kind of hoped to get with Finn in the sequel trilogy that we didn't really get to take to the heights, the importance of disobeying, the whatever bullshit orders are coming around. So overall, I guess I like Filoni's vision better on this, but anyway, I don't know if that I have an end point with that. Go ahead.
I mean, I'll tell you one thing that I would like to see in this show, and it's a little dark, but I think it would be, the thing I've been most interested about the clones post the Clone Wars and post Order 66 are, do any of them end up developing some sort of, post-traumatic stress disorder because of Order 66? Because we don't hear about that.
Right.
Maybe it happens, years down the line after they've all been decommissioned or whatever, like, does, the fact that they turned on their leaders and, just so instantaneously after they've had time to think about it, really think about it. Was there any, lingering psychological effects from that?
Oh, I'd love for them to cover that. It'd be amazing. I mean, what they could, you could go deep with that. Like, you could get into the heart of individuality. You could get into so many things. Even, even in Bad Batch, the one, I forget his name. It's not Hunter, not Wrecker, not Crosshair. It's the one who's like part machine. Now, like he
Echo.
Echo, right? Who has so many droid parts.
Yeah, he's the reg.
Right. You could talk about things around that. Like, hey, man, how does it feel to, like, not be very human,
Right,
and, yeah, there's places that they could go. I don't know that this show's ever going to go there. Go ahead.
They almost dipped into a bit of that with one of the episodes where he starts, they sell him as a droid. And he's kind of like,
in episode 5,
yeah, he's like rolling his eye. Yeah, I think it was 4. He's rolling his eyes, like, okay, I'll do this, but I mean, this is ridiculous. You're insulting me.
Oh yeah, well, even and when he gets away, it was great because he said, It's like, wait, but I paid for you. He's like, yeah, you got a deal. And he runs off. Like, even that was a great statement. Like, you know, hey, I'm worth a lot more. You know, they're basically saying I'm a person and there's no price too high, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, yeah, I hope that they go some of those distances. I hope that they explore some of that. And if anything, like Omega, you know, that childlike wonder that they didn't get to have can really be a reflection on them. And that's about the best thing you could do with the character of Omega. Because overall, the character of Omega, frankly, is annoying to me right now. That's my critique from episode. Go ahead.
She's a season 1 Ahsoka. But I mean,
yeah.
This is the you know, Filoni method, if you will. this is not a mistake. This is by design. And Filoni has said this, is that, you know, Ahsoka was not designed to be liked in the beginning.
Uh-huh.
In fact, he told Ashley Eckstein that, hey, like, you know, like, there's going to be some fan backlash. There's going to be some people who really do not like your character, but we're going to change their minds.
Yeah. I think and you're right. And I could see where in the future, and they're already playing her up as being somehow really important to the Kaminoans. We'll talk about that. Disney just has to have their fucking princess. Like they have to have their, I mean, they even like put that stupid jewel on her head. And
well, I'm glad she ripped that. Yeah, I'm glad she ripped that off after the first episode.
Yeah, because that was totally meant to look like a tiara or something. And
right.
It felt like a character that was just like a Disney requirement. I know Filoni can turn it around and make it, because I mean, I hated Ezra too.
She doesn't really come off as like the princess type to me. She's more of a tomboy, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they definitely play her as tough. Like I'll give it that. Yeah, you know. Yeah, I mean, like I said, admittedly, I hated Ezra too, and now I can't wait for when Ezra comes back, because like it's just going to be a badass moment,
right?
You know,
right.
So,
so just give it time. Give it time.
I'll give it time. But for now, it's just it is annoying.
Yeah, I understand. I get it. I just I said, I see the path laid out before us, so I'm taking things in stride.
Yeah, fair enough. So. We end up with, of course, the Bad Batch originally has, you know, 5 characters within it that we experienced throughout the first episode. And, you know, the A-Team can really only have 4, so we got to get rid of one of them. But Crosshair is the one that, you know, that basically sticks and ends up becoming, you know, kind of they're setting him up as the villain, you know, against the Bad Batch. And it's pretty clear from episode 1. And then it really just gets hammered home come episode 2 of the series. How do you feel about the character of Crosshair so far? I mean, do you see him as, go ahead.
I mean, like, I gotta wonder how long ahead they were thinking about this, because I didn't like Crosshair from season 7.
Oh, right.
I just thought he was an ass.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree with that.
And so, like, you know, I definitely feel like, you know, I was intended to feel that way. That was the purpose, you know. So they've been, you know, laying the tracks for this for, you know, at least since last year with the season 7 of the Clone Wars.
Yeah. I mean, and frankly, like if they're gonna use him as the explanation for, because basically they have a clone here that like has the chip but doesn't exactly need the chip and is like defining himself on his obedience to the death. And so again, if they're planning on making him like the origin of the Death Troopers, like I think that'll be a very interesting story arc. I'm on board for that.
Yeah. Well, no, like I said, I think it plays very well in the fact that, you know, the human recruits are, you know, finding out from the clone what it's going to take to be, you know, a soldier of the Empire.
Right.
And not only that, he makes a great antagonist because, you know, what better antagonist than somebody who, you know, who knows how you tick.
Yeah, right. He was one of them.
He has a personal, you know, relationship with all of them, with the exception of Omega, of course.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, I mean, it doesn't have the same emotional weight as this does. I'm reminded of the Expendables 2, where you have Mel Gibson, or no, it was 3. Sorry, it's The Expendables 3, where Mel Gibson was originally like Sylvester Stallone's like partner in The Expendables, and then he goes bad and he's like hunting down the Expendables or whatever. And but you need that character who like knows it so deeply to actually believe that you could take down, like people like Hunter, Wrecker, Echo, so on, and so like that works. I mean, it's an old story. It's almost a trope, but you need that. Like, it's necessary.
Right. And it creates drama because he's going to know how to push their buttons.
Right. Bingo. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and we did get, in episode 3, so there was an option. I was really, really hoping that family was going to take Omega away, but that didn't happen. So.
Well, I thought that I was going to bring that up earlier, but I thought that episode was really important in terms of like, the clones really have no idea of how to deal with the child.
Right.
They didn't have childhoods.
Right.
They just, they don't get it.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. That's where Omega could be a really great character, is because she can be that reflection of what they never had. And I think it's like, I always laugh because Wrecker is like so protective, emotionally and physically of Omega. It's like, don't stress out Omega. Don't stress out the kid, And I thought that was pretty sweet. Like, I really like that. And I mean, and to continue with the A-Team analogy, like Mr. T in the show, the A-Team was always requesting the writers, make me do stuff for the kids, like show me taking care of the kids and everything. Like, that was such a big deal to him. So I love that Wrecker's almost kind of carrying on that tradition. But I mean, psychologically, like, there's an importance there as well, I think, that I like. So I guess let's talk a little bit.
That he's he's very comfortable with his relationship with her. Like, he knows she's smart and he knows he's not smart. And he's okay with that. In fact, he loves that they have that dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed actually with the character of Wrecker, because like that kind of character can be a trope too, and where I'm missing the battle, whatever. But like, it's actually funny. I've enjoyed the interplay of these characters. I really have.
The best word, it's endearing. Yes,
yeah. I mean, there's you could say that they're very simple characters, but considering their pedigree, meaning their pedigree is in their family of clones, like that they're all clones, and the story around the clones gives them a lot of background very quickly that you don't normally get for characters that usually play up some of these tropes. And I'm surprised at how well this works.
I mean, and we probably overuse the word tropes, but I mean, archetypes work for a reason.
Well, right. There's a reason they are archetypes. Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, even if I can recognize an archetype right off the bat, I don't take that as an immediate negative.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Again, I'm really surprised at how much, like, I have no problem other than my annoyance of the Mega. I have no problem with what they're doing with these characters, what these characters are doing. It's all working for me. I mean, you'd say the same, I assume?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I wholeheartedly endorse the show.
Yeah.
And guys, don't watch this at 2.5 speed. No. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, you don't have. I don't know.
Brian's just being silly.
Yeah, take it in because it is enjoyable Star Wars.
Yeah, enjoy it. That's the point of it. Enjoy it.
I could get into a big subject around that 2.5x thing, but we'll save that for another time.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm really enjoying this show. And I mean, it's hard for me, other than like outside of maybe The Mandalorian in the past, it's hard for me to even think of a show where I'm like, oh yeah, when that's out, like, I'm hitting the torrent sites and let's get it. But I'm there for it. So let's talk about episode 4, because I think this is maybe the most important episode so far. And we do get that connective tissue of this Filoniverse, as it were, in that Fennec Shand, being voiced by Ming-Na herself, makes an appearance, even though, they don't say her name. If you know Ming-Na, and if you certainly watch The Mandalorian enough, you get it. And certainly when she puts the helmet on, you get it. And she's, of course, going after the A-Team. I mean, the Bad Batch. It's cool. Like her introduction, she needed no introduction. You knew what was going on. You knew the deal, partly because of this was a time where, because I watched something previously in Star Wars, and then even though I'm going back in time, to the Galactic, Empire era, it worked, because Ming-Na, her character as Fennec Shand, we didn't get introduced to until The Mandalorian, and we didn't even get until season 2, didn't get a whole lot of her, frankly. It's definitely setting up her character to have more meaning in The Mandalorian, but then vice versa. The Mandalorian has set her up to have a lot more meaning, and it makes sense. You can totally believe that she could go toe to toe with all 4 members of the Bad Batch, bringing her in. So a great villain to include along with Crosshair, I think. What were your thoughts about Fennec Shand being included in Bad Batch?
Yeah, it does. Like you said, it brings up that connective tissue. It also, we have our first, I'd say our second big mystery. This first big mystery of the show would be, why was Omega made,
right?
And what's going on with that. But the second big mystery we have now is who hired Fennec Shand,
right?
And I almost wonder if there's going to be, some sort of Boba Fett appearance from this. If perhaps their relationship goes back that far.
I did not think of that. I would like that.
Yeah.
Because that would give, again, more color to season 2 of The Mandalorian. Why did she suddenly decide to work with Boba? Why did Boba save her ass? Well,
right, exactly. Yeah. Why did Boba show up?
Right.
We only saw his boots, but he saved her. Why would he do that? He's not exactly an altruistic guy.
Yeah, it's not just because happens to be on Tatooine.
Right, right.
Like, there's got to be a reason.
And Fennec Shand, throughout the whole, arc seemed very differential to him. And, it definitely seemed to me, at least in hindsight, that these two have a history.
Yeah. So if they're setting up that history, awesome. And that sets up for, like, frankly, I'd love it if we got some Boba Fett in this, because I feel like we need a lot more. We've got some post story now for Boba Fett, thanks to The Mandalorian, and of course, Book of Boba Fett coming out later this year. But I need some more intervening years, because one of my complaints with the Clone Wars is, frankly, the character of Boba Fett. I'm glad he was there, but man, that was not, I know he was just a kid, but it just wasn't what I wanted out of Boba Fett at the time.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that, like there was a planned Boba Fett episode for the Clone Wars in that last season, because there were animatics that I saw at Star Wars Celebration that would have actually further developed him into the Boba Fett that we know today, and would have explained how he got the dent on his helmet.
Right.
And it would have been great if we could have got it. Unfortunately, we didn't get it. But the other interesting thing, too, is that, kind of hinting at this relationship between Fennec Shand and Boba Fett is it kind of mirrors the way that his father operated, in that, Jango Fett used, Zam Wesell as basically a proxy to do some of his dirty work.
Yeah. And not uninteresting that Fennec Shand wears a very similar uniform, I think, to Zam. Just different colors, orange instead of the purple, but very similar. So I could dig that. And in fact, if they're going to go further with that in Bad Batch, that probably will set us up for elements of Book of Boba Fett.
Right.
Which, hey, like 2 thumbs up. Let's go. So again, and this speaks more to why, no, don't watch this at 2.5x. Take this in. This is good Star Wars. So I thought that was the most interesting inclusion. Of course, they didn't even mention her name. You basically have to watch the credits and, to see that, it's Fennec Shand, and that's Ming-Na Wen, and,
Oh, no, the lady that hired her did eventually reveal to the, that her name was Fennec Shand.
Well, in episode, was it in 4? That episode 5,
you're right.
Mentioned
You're right.
That it was
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm getting.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, I'm getting it mixed up.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no worries.
I'm jumping ahead.
That's all right. But in episode 5, they do mention that it's Fennec.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously her. I mean,
yes. Yeah.
It's.
Yeah, and it was a nice touch to have her in. Again, episode 4 also explored kind of what we already talked about earlier, this idea of, well, wait a minute, what happens to the clone troopers that serve the Empire? Like, how do the stormtroopers become a thing? And we get to start to see how stormtroopers become a thing, this inclusion of, soldiers. I have a really go ahead.
Something else that we forgot to bring up was the ID system they introduced.
Oh, the chain codes.
Yeah, the chain codes.
Okay. I'm glad you brought this up. Okay, so this is a weird thing. And you get some all right. So, well, do you want to get into what you think about them, Rob? And then
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean,
you get into what you think about them, and then I've got some background to get into on this and some thought, but go for it.
I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, the name alone kind of hints, hints at something. I mean,
does it start with a B?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the Empire is using blockchains. I don't think that's a mistake. I don't think they happened upon that by accident,
No.
And personally, I think it's brilliant.
Yes. Fuck. Folks, you got to understand. Okay. You mind if I cut in for just a second?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. I mean, I knew this is where you were going too. I mean,
we did not pre-plan this conversation. We didn't talk about this earlier.
Brian and I just we operate on the same wavelength.
Exactly.
Even we don't talk for like weeks at a time. We just pick up where we left off, and I know what he's thinking. He knows what I'm thinking. It's
our quanta are spinning in the same direction. So
right.
Okay. So here's the thing. First off, I did this first, okay? Filoni doesn't have to cut me a check. That's fine. All right. But now, all right, let me be clear. I dig Bitcoin. Okay. Like I'm on board. There are cryptocurrencies, blockchain technologies, like Namecoin, whatever. Like there are ideas that are very interesting. The peer-to-peer future, you couldn't find a stronger supporter of the peer-to-peer future than me. Okay. So, and you can go back, through my 10-year history of my show, Sovryn Tech, where I can prove the point. But you can also find fucking exactly where this is exactly what I said was going to happen. I have a phrase that I used to say often, and that is ID is for cattle. And that statement is still true to this day. And now, to be clear, so I warned years ago, hey, guess what? Like this could be used for ID systems, and this is a bad idea, meaning blockchain. Then you get like events that occurred, and we're talking back in 2014, 2015, like ID 2020, where that's exactly what they're talking about. It's that we will get everybody on blockchain. We'll get your identity information, and we're going to take care of the unbanked. We're going to do all this, blah, blah, blah. And of course, I was on my show saying, no, don't do it. And I even went so far as to make fictional episodes talking about how blockchain, in fact, I called it ominous. That was the name of the blockchain, was the big bad, was the villain. In fact, not unironically, in one of those episodes, I even used the A-Team theme at the end of it, but that's, just a bit of synchronicity. I did this first and I called this first. But I think that it is, I don't know whose idea it was to do this whole chain code thing. But that's brilliant, to bring that up, because basically as soon as the Empire gets in place, they want everybody in the fucking galaxy to get a chain code and register to get a chain code. And it becomes a problem. Go ahead.
The way they implemented it was just, it's brilliant. I'm sure there are many anti-authoritarian types that listen to the show and are going oh, I wouldn't stand for that. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but if you want to like travel and, engage in commerce, then what are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If you don't have it, you're screwed. And that was actually in episode 3. That was that was kind of the major crux of the episode, the major issue of the episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it just proves how easily this kind of stuff is implemented if they wanted to.
Yeah. And it's frankly, not to bring in the real world too much, but it's a little creepy, when we're in. Go ahead.
It's interesting because I watched a YouTube channel not too long ago, and they were discussing this too, because, I went out and looked for information on this.
Sure.
Because I knew exactly what it was when they brought it up in the episode. Apparently chain codes, they didn't originate even with the Empire.
Okay.
They implemented the chain codes on the prison population in Star Wars. And the bounty hunters used them. That's how the tracking fobs work.
Right. So they did say chain codes in that, in the Mandalorian. Yeah. You're right. Okay.
So it started out with keeping tabs on the criminal elements in the galaxy, and then they decide, hey, this works so well, we're going to expand it out to the whole population. And basically, and this is a lesson for real life, because you always look to what happens to the people with the least amount of, quote, rights or privileges in a society to see what's going to happen. You see what happens to them first, and it's eventually going to spread out to everybody else.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and this is, well, again, like I was going to say, not to get, it's creepy to like get all this messaging about a chain code when everybody's talking about having like vaccine IDs,
right?
Like right now.
Oh yeah, no, I imagine if the vaccine passport becomes a thing, that's how they implement it, is with the blockchain technology.
Right, because, and this is where Bad Batch is really engaging in a bit of technological brilliance. So is the Mandalorian, obviously, is that like, look, giant server farms and cloud computing cannot work in space. Like when you start traveling to outer space, like you can't transmit information that fast. Like it just doesn't work that way. You have to operate, you have to use peer-to-peer technology to navigate, an interstellar civilization. Like you don't have a choice, it's just the only logical way to do that. And so to use blockchain, like A, you kind of have to, but B, it does end up feeling kind of creepy, when you realize, wow, why are they saying chain code? I mean, you could argue that it's like more of a metaphorical thing, that it's like the chains that bind you down, that make you a slave or something like that in the Empire. But no, I think I get the sense they're playing with the concept of blockchain. And the reason I say that also is because, so I've got a little more color on this too. And that is the last book of the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. So that came out, I think, in April. I read it. And in that book, spoiler alerts, don't read it, but in that book, it's not that good. Okay. But there's a very,
I can't imagine, the first book was such a stellar piece of work.
Such a page turner. I mean,
yeah.
Look, Alexander Freed's a great writer, but oh, fuck. Anyway, so what you find out in the last Alphabet Squadron book is that the Empire was creating a gigantic database, and this is where chain codes come in, a gigantic database on the actions of every single human, on every single person that they could, human or not, I suppose. Okay, but on every single person in the galaxy. And they were collecting all of that data for one purpose, or the claim of one purpose was that so that the Emperor could basically blackmail anyone into doing anything. Because if anybody wouldn't obey or stepped out of line, the Empire or the Emperor could just say, hey, I've got this on camera of what you did, so you're going to have to step in line. And this will probably, I imagine they will introduce this because the crux of the Alphabet Squadron book, or the climax is, do we destroy that database or don't we? And so there's a conflict there. Like the New Republic would love to have it, but then like all the ex-Imperials, even the ones who have turned good, don't want the Republic to know, about what they've done and everything, because it basically condemns them for the rest of their lives. Which I think is actually a great message. Like, I love this. It's like, yeah, I mean, this is actually back when I was on Sovryn Tech years ago, 2013, 2014, critiquing blockchain IDs. I said this very thing. I said, look, the closest thing I had to a digital, or that any of us had to a digital ID in the past decades, since the internet was a thing, was perhaps an email address. And I brought up like my original email address that I had on Yahoo. It was tankprogram0000@yahoo.com. Okay. But here's the thing, so that could be my ID. And in fact, I've had arguments with people who say, oh, why do you keep changing your email or blah, blah. And I don't really change it that often, but I mean, over time, the thing is that, look, like I am not the same person that I was when I had that email address. Yeah, I don't, and that's really it. Like just the same idea with this like Imperial database. Somebody who was a TIE fighter pilot after the Emperor died can completely change their mind. And, it's more about what they do after the atrocity, perhaps even more so than the atrocity itself. And to like attach to somehow, because I mean, people will just naturally do this. They're, if they find out the more information they have on you, like they're just going to hold it against you. Okay. Even if you've been trying to rectify, make amends, whatever it is, forever. But it's just, I'm getting way off track. But I think that it's a great message to bring up in Star Wars. And I'm amazed at just how deep it is on Alexander Freed's part that, hey, like you can't hold like history against somebody forever, especially when they're taking actions to repair what they had done perhaps in the past. I can speak to that myself. I mean, fuck, like I rarely talk about my military experience. Not that I'm like afraid to, I'm not, but also I don't want to be like identified for that the rest of my life because I hate what I did back then. And I'm a completely different person now. Like, totally different. Like I'm the most peaceful guy you're ever going to meet in your life. And so, how terrible it is to hold people to all of these actions, but that's ultimately what this is saying. And from the chain code to that Imperial database to the whole thing is that it shows you the power of having so much information over people that, when you have society where there's accepted morals and blah, 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 and all this, it can all get held against you. And you can be made like, I guess this gets back to how did the stormtroopers become the stormtroopers? Like if they're not willing to follow orders like Crosshair is in Bad Batch, how do you get them to actually obey? You get them to obey because if they ever fall out of line, any commander or the Emperor or whoever can say, hey, we have you on recording of slaughtering these kids. So unless you want everybody to know what you did, you better, step into line. Right. And so it does give a malicious justification to why people went along with the Empire, even when they knew that it was doing like evil shit. Because if they didn't, like they would get chastised or worse, or even killed by other members of society. So this idea of the chain codes, nasty bit of business. And that last book in the Alphabet Squadron trilogy, like shows you what the ultimate purpose of that was, is to basically to have all that information on people, to have that chain code is to keep all of them in line.
Yeah. And there's, well, not only that, but I mean, like there's a very disturbing, unintended consequence from all that too. And we're seeing this in our society now today, and that it has essentially a chilling effect and it calcifies society because people aren't able to move beyond anything. Right. You go on Twitter and, at the drop of the hat, everybody's willing to hold somebody accountable for just one little small thing they said, 5-10 years ago. Like you felt you moved beyond that and you processed it and you deal with it. And then you have all these people, you have the mob that comes in and essentially, pulls you back into that person you used to be. And you can't move forward. The society can't move forward that way.
No, they won't let go. And you know what? The proof is actually another Star Wars example. The proof is with Henry Cavill. So Henry Cavill years ago dated Gina Carano, Gina Carano, right? And I mean, look, Gina Carano hasn't done anything wrong. Okay. Like I'm not in that crowd, but there is a large crowd who, they're ready to put the scarlet letter on her. And
they already have.
Oh, they already have. Right. Yeah, exactly. They're just waiting for when she could stand still long enough to light the fire, I guess. But Henry Cavill was dating Gina Carano years ago. This year in 2021, I mean, we're talking like, what was it, back in like 2013 or something that they were dating, I mean, it was almost like 10 years ago, I think. And somebody finds out about that today. And then what are they doing? They're taking the pitchforks to Henry Cavill in 2021.
Yeah.
Years later. And it's like, well, what? They're not dating anymore, but B, I mean, like, so what, and so that's the thing, is that even something as simple as that, because he was somehow, in a relationship with that gal who now, her name is Mud, according to these people, they go and attack him, retroactively.
Right. I mean, this is even a step beyond pre-crime, because you're holding somebody responsible for something that somebody else did in the future.
Right. I mean, we don't know, maybe Henry Cavill left her because he totally disagreed with her politics or something. Like maybe he was in the right. Like, what the fuck are you doing to this guy?
Right.
So basically, if you think that we're talking about like something that just couldn't happen, no, you're just dead wrong, because people will just use Twitter like chain codes, and will post, long after decades after the fact, will go after people. Crazy. Yeah. So great point, Rob. Yeah, this chain code thing, I hope they keep running with that and keep showing, hey, this is ugly. And clearly we already know the end game. Like Alexander Freed already laid out the end game of what the purpose of these are. And the debate, I don't think the book did a good job of like really ending the debate or even went deep enough. But if you get what he was putting down, you can pick up what he was putting down if you're able.
You know what? I just thought of this too, and it's really interesting. It just kind of reinforces the point I made about how this kind of thing calcifies a society. And you could lay this down as kind of the reason why all the technology in the original trilogy looks worn down, old, and used, because they never moved beyond. You look at all the stuff from the prequel era, and it all looks, shiny, new, and hyper futuristic.
Yep,
and
artistic.
Then you get, yeah, exactly. And then you get into, the rebellion era, and everybody's using used shit. It's all run down and cobbled together, and duct tape and shoestrings, and this is what happens.
Well, they're afraid. I mean, it's clear, like people were afraid to express themselves, right?
Right.
Because you could see it in the prequel technology, like in the N1 Starfighter, like, I mean, just these gorgeous, like fluid designs and everything, like it was done by an artist, and then, yeah, it like people are just so afraid. They're so lockstepped that they're afraid to express themselves, even in their, what they create, even in their engineering.
Yeah. It's a chilling effect.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. Well said. So this show could really touch on some big themes.
Yeah.
getting to the Bad Batch, this really could touch on some big stuff. Wow. So you also got a mini review of the Alphabet Squadron trilogy there, by the way. And just don't read it. Go to Wikipedia and like read about it. But there's too many pages with very little payoff. Other than I do think that the prediction of like what a database of what everybody does, which exists right now, it's called Facebook or Twitter or, Instagram or TikTok, that's the same thing as this imperial database that could be used against every single person on the planet.
Yep.
It's a good warning to have for Star Wars to have, and very ahead of its time, and kind of odd to come from a corporatist shill company like Disney. So,
well, that's the benefit of having somebody who's not concerned about, the dollar signs.
Exactly.
And creative control.
Exactly. Bingo. You got it. Keep the money dumb. Let the artists do what they got to do. And
right.
It'll stand up. Oh man. Okay. Well, so that whole diatribe, I'm glad you brought up the chain codes because as soon as I heard that too, I was like, oh, blockchain. Yeah. Like I totally, go ahead.
I don't know why it didn't occur to me when we were watching The Mandalorian. Because like you said, they brought it up there when Boba Fett's bringing up his armor, chain code. And I didn't think about it at the time. And it totally makes sense now.
Yeah, I mean, right. Like when it was said in The Mandalorian, I think I thought of it as, okay, the person's a criminal. So, so it's like the chains, the ball and chain that a prisoner wears. So like, I think that was my reasoning at that point. But now that it's being applied to everybody, now it makes sense. And then when you get that backstory or kind of that retroactive information of the Imperial database of what everybody does for blackmail, that just like explains it even better what it's really all about. So, and I imagine there is reason for like why that last Alphabet Squadron book came out just before Bad Batch ended up airing as well. So that said, we'll get, I guess, any more on episode 4. I mean, it was a Fennec Shand. I thought having her again was a great inclusion. I have no complaints there. I thought that worked really well. Tarkin was in the episode. He delivered. And I think his point where he says, the clones are still going to have a purpose. I do think that is also pointing more at the Death Troopers.
Right.
Because it seems Imperial officials just love those damn things. So episode 5, if we want to, go on to that. Baby Rancor was, that was pretty great.
Yeah.
Like now I kind of imagine I'm going to watch Return of the Jedi, and now I'm going to cry when the Rancor dies.
Right, yeah.
Like, this is really going to be sad. Like, God damn it, Luke. So we get some very funny moments with a baby Rancor. But ultimately I feel like we get the setup for what is going to be the episodic nature, or kind of the A, every show seems to have an A story and a B story. The A story is going to be the A team. This is where they get set up. Hey, there's more money where this comes from, because they get hired to do a job. They go and do it. They get set up to where they could do more jobs. And that's going to be our thrust. And I'm fine with that. Like this is what I expected. And we got some great setup, so I'm on board with it. I mean, what did you think about this episode overall, Rob? And then I guess maybe the direction that it's taking things in.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is pretty much going along with, we both expected in terms of kind of like the overall arc of the show being, and, the A story, if you will. So it was more of kind of like a little bit more slapstick in this episode, and that was fine.
Yeah.
I had no problems with that. They played it off very well.
Yeah, Bib Fortuna. It was nice to have him there. Like, that was a nice little inclusion. And yeah, there was a bit of slapstick, but that's fine. I mean, and that's an element of the A team as well. But I liked it. And episode 6, I don't admit. Go ahead.
They do seem to be setting up something with perhaps a problem with Wrecker in the future, because he keeps on, hitting his head and grunting, and his chip is acting up or something.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a problem down the line.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see certainly what happens there. That is an interesting, like, ticking time bomb basically in all of their heads. Sure, it didn't activate, but I think it's still there in all of them. I don't think they removed them, did they?
No. Because I mean, as far as we know, Rex is the only one that knows how.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I wonder where that's going to go.
Well, they do have, a connection through what's his name from Seleucami. I can't remember his name now. The guy with the kids and the Twi'lek wife.
Oh, yeah. I can't think. I know who you mean.
Yeah. So they have a connection to Rex through him. So he could show up in the series again and they could potentially put them, in touch with Rex, and Rex could explain how to remove the chips.
Yeah, I mean, because we're getting, mention, and we're getting Saw Gerrera in this. We know that. That's something else that has to come into play. I'm expecting some kind of interaction, admittedly, between Omega and Jyn Erso, a very young Jyn Erso, also. But anyway, that's getting off into sidetracks. Yeah, that's a good point. So I thought the first 5 episodes, I mean, far better than I expected, frankly. Like I granted I wasn't expecting a lot, but I'm getting way more than I was planning on, and I'm happy about it. And talking about a lot more with you, Rob, I like it even more.
Cool.
Coming out of this conversation.
The show is pretty much everything that I expected and wanted. So I'm
right.
I'm happy as a pig in shit.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's Clone Wars season 8, but that's not a bad thing. Like, I don't understand why people are saying it's a bad thing. Let's keep the story going. The story's supposed to go all the way to the end of Rebels anyway. So
right. Yeah. Yeah.
and then Rebels picks up from there too. So, right. Has conclusion to come, whenever we get Ezra back and the rest of the gang. So yeah, I dig it. I dig what's happening, and any other thoughts you want to share on Bad Batch, Rob?
No, not really. I mean, we've said quite a bit,
Yeah.
There's certainly a lot to chew on here.
Yeah, and I'm sure next time we convene, there'll be we'll have quite a few more episodes in the hopper to discuss, and we'll see if they plan on taking it elsewhere.
Right.
So, with all of that reviewing of some pretty damn good TV, frankly, let's get into what some would say is the greatest things that TV has ever produced, maybe next to Carl Sagan's Cosmos. And if you ask me, I'd put Babylon 5 a little higher, but we don't need to go there, because we are here to talk about some Star Trek. What at one time was the antithesis of Star Wars. And there were often, Rob, did you ever experience the fanboy wars between Star Wars and Star Trek fans?
Oh, of course. I mean, and to a certain degree, I even took part in it,
What side? Don't add to the Imperial database.
Yeah, okay.
I'm pretty sure I know, but yeah. All right, we'll leave it at that. So Rob loves them all.
Yep.
Yeah. Were you mean to Star Trek fans, Rob? Come on. No. Were you on the Star Trek side?
I was on both.
Yeah, you're on both. Yeah.
I really was. I mean, there were times when I have conversations with fellow Star Trek fans, and I said, "Oh yeah, Star Trek is way better than Star Wars, and this and this and this and this." And then I have conversations with Star Wars fans, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, Star Trek doesn't do any of this kind of stuff." Yeah, I mean, just it's apples and oranges, dude, and you can love both.
That's right. Eat your fruit, folks. So, well, Rob and I do both love Star Trek. And in the last episode of TIE Fighter Renegades, we went down a list, had frankly a great conversation around our favorite Star Trek, or our ranking of Star Trek films. And this was inspired by a video done by Trekspertise that I thought was particularly well done. I will link to that video in the show notes for this episode as well, where he ranked both the movies and the TV series. And now we're going to get into our ranking for the TV series. And I think Rob's picks here are going to be as interesting, shall we say, as his movie ranking was. So how did we do this last time? Did we go back and forth? Did we we just called it and then we talked about it, right?
Yeah, I think so. And we started from the bottom up.
All right. So let's go so we got 6 here, because there is, as Neo said, there is no spoon. Well, as we say, there is no Discovery. There is no Picard.
That's a race to the bottom.
Yeah. So there are 6 series, but basically, if you want to count the 7, it's this whole muddled. What's that asshat's name? I can't even think of it now. Kurtzman.
Whatever.
It's this whole Kurtzman verse.
Yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like Dune. You know, there are 6 books and they were written by Frank.
You're right, exactly. We hear about there's like the stuff done by Brian Herbert that's like fan fiction, but
yeah,
anyway.
fan fiction,
Yeah.
which we know how messy that can get.
Oh, it gets messy. So here we go. So we have 6 series to break down, of course. And I guess let's do it. So number 6 on my list, and then we'll go to Rob's. Number 6 on my list is Star Trek Enterprise. Of course, from the last kind of series of the official Star Trek canon. Rob, your number 6 was
the animated series.
Okay.
And this is just kind of almost by default. And I'll be honest, I haven't even watched all of the animated series.
That's fair. That's totally fair. So, all right. So my number 5 actually isn't that far off. My number 5 is the animated series. Number 5 for you, Rob?
I'm sure Brian is going to have some words about this, but Voyager.
My pants just got really tight. I don't know. No. In the back. anyway. Number 4.
I mean, do you want to talk about it?
All right. Well, we will. Well, because I want to go down your list. I think people might have heard mine before, so I want to go down your list, and we will.
No problem.
The one thing I'll say quick on the animated series for me, the only reason that mine's at number 5, because we don't need to have a long conversation around the animated series. The only reason it's number 5, I can't put anything that has the work of William Shatner and the original series crew like at the bottom. I just can't see doing that. Mm-hmm. And that Roddenberry's involved with. That's all that I can say on it, and also like I did feel like it took Star Trek to like places that special effects budgets and special effects as they were at the time couldn't do, and it really made for some great stories. And there's like a Uhura episode where she like really kicks ass, and that's awesome. But anyway, okay, so there we go. And like you said, for you, the animated series was default. So let's go to number 4. Number 4 is for me is Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I'm sure Rob's going to have a problem with that. Number 4, number 4 for Rob is
Enterprise.
All right. Number 3 for me is Star Trek The Next Generation. Number 3 for Rob. I think everybody else just shit their pants at that point, but
I mean, I get it. The original series.
For number 3 for you. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So number 2 for me, Star Trek Voyager. Number 2 for Rob,
The Next Generation.
Okay. Number 1 for me, of course, there's only one thing left, that being the original series. And number 1 for Rob,
at Deep Space Nine.
We're going to have a conversation about that.
Okay. I can hold my own.
Yeah. I think that's nuts, but that's okay. No, I don't. I don't think it's nuts. I think it's anyway. All right. We will talk about it. So there's our listings. And more so like our movie picks were kind of like just off kilter a little bit in differences. It's where I feel like this is wildly different, minus the animated series.
Well, we did have a couple of wild differences in their movie picks. I mean, my top pick was
Generations
of
which that hey right.
Hey, to each their own.
Yeah, no, you're right. So okay, so let's do this. So of course we talked about the animated series already, like our reasonings behind where they fall for each of us. So I don't think we have to go any further on that. I totally understand your point that it's just kind of like defaults to the end. And there's always the debate of what level of canon is that show anyway.
Right. I think that's one of the reasons why I just never really got around to watching the whole thing.
Yeah, like the Okudas never count it in their encyclopedias or chronologies.
Right.
So I get that. I do think there's brilliant stuff in there, but I totally understand where you're coming from. I've never held it against like a Star Trek fan that they never watched the animated series. It's like, okay, so what?
And I had like way back in the day, I had issues with the antimatter universe thing. I mean, oh yeah, that was ridiculous.
Yeah. Best episodes are with Spock and Uhura, frankly. So anyway, So let's go to number 5, because for number 5 for me ranked really high. Number 2. There's even been times where I think I've called it my favorite. But for you, it's number 5, and that's Star Trek Voyager. Mm-hmm. What puts this at number 5 for you?
Like Voyager for me, like a lot of Star Trek shows, didn't really hit its stride until a couple years in. I mean, I would say the first couple of years of Voyager, where I think I even at the time I called it the anomaly, the spatial anomaly of the week show, because that's basically what it was every week. And then they got into the Year of Hell, which was it was so dark.
That was very dark. Yeah.
I didn't like it. It just set a bad taste in my mouth. Mm-hmm. And there was some stuff going on behind the scenes with Voyager that I didn't like with,
with Jerry Taylor.
But also with the way they got rid of Jennifer Lean and the animosity between Jerry Taylor and Kate Mulgrew, and it's all very disappointing.
Sure. Did you at least initially, I feel like this is a character that a lot of people learn to love seasons later. Did you initially have an issue with 7 of 9 when she came in season 4, right?
No.
Scorpion? No?
I mean, I knew why she was there. It was obvious, but I didn't have a problem with it. Mm-hmm. And I just love the Borg so much. So, more Borg and having, a reformed Borg on board was just a cool idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose we're not going to do it now, but it'd be fun to do like a captain's ranking at some point, because I'm curious where Janeway would fit for you. Yeah,
I'd have to admit she's not going to be very high, dude.
Wow.
She's too authoritarian.
Oh, well, that's true. She definitely cracks the whip. That's you're not wrong about that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting that you would say that. I mean, do you have more on that, or?
No, we'll talk about that. Like I said, we'll do a captain's ranking at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, just I kind of have to just get that off my chest, that I would not put Janeway. I don't know where exactly I'd put her, but she would not be very high for that particular reason.
Wow. Okay. That is going to be an amazing conversation too. So there's content for the next episode. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, for me, so why Voyager ranks so high for me, I won't spend a ton of time on it. And I've said this many times about the show. It was Star Trek for Star Trek's sake. Like, it was Star Trek. The reason why I don't think the show was ever super popular was because you had to be a Star Trek fan to get it. If you weren't a Star Trek fan, like if you weren't bought into the mythology and everything and the way that even the anomaly of the week worked, and a lot of the techno babble, you were just lost when you watched the show, I feel like. But that's what I loved about it, was that it was that payoff for, hey, if you've been like so knee deep into Star Trek all your life, we've got the show for you that is meant for you as a fan. And admittedly, like, I thought Janeway was pretty great. I get it that Chakotay and some of the other characters never really like got to certain heights.
Well, not to mention the problematic depictions of Native Americans.
Yes.
Or not. I'm not Native Americans, but Native Americans.
Yeah, Native Americans. Yeah. Yes, I agree, and I mean there are a lot of issues around that. It's a very interesting history and story to get into around how Chakotay ended up becoming a character. So I get that, but I mean the characters we did have, I never liked Neelix, admittedly. So
he grew on me. Mm-hmm. I didn't like him at first, but he grew on me. I thought Tuvix was brilliant. I love that episode.
Oh, that was good. Well, that's the thing, is the character of Tuvok, 7 of 9, the Doctor especially, I mean, are just dynamite characters. I
even like Harry. I mean, poor Harry, who never got promoted. He had a raw deal.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you brought, and then later seasons when they brought in the Borg, I mean, you just got like Unimatrix Zero, all these different ideas that were just so damn cool. Again, you've got to be bought into the mythology, but if you were, and you wanted, you just wanted something that just was constantly self-referential, I feel like it was that. So that's why it ranks high for me. But regardless, we'll move on. Number 4. So Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah.
I'm just admittedly, I'm surprised that this is above Voyager, but okay. Sell me on this.
You know what? There was a time where this was at the bottom of my list.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be entirely honest with you, but I did a rewatch of it several years ago,
mm-hmm.
and it just really grew on me.
Yeah.
I mean, this show does really good in binge watching and in a rewatch.
Yes. Yeah. When you're not waiting every week. Right.
Yeah. It gets, and like I said, I think it gets better the more you watch it.
Yeah. Because you see a lot of the nuance in, especially a lot of the Vulcan characters. And there's real character arcs in this. I mean, they're just fantastic. But I mean, keep going if you got more.
But I mean, and honestly, the thing I hate most about the show is what they did to Trip in the end.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, spoiler alerts, he gets offed.
Yeah. That still pisses me off to this very day. Because to me, it was even more a hollow death than Tasha Yar's.
Yeah. I know. I completely agree on that. Yeah, I think one of the biggest critiques of the show, and also for me, is that last episode is hot trash. But that.
Then I could say the same thing about Voyager.
You thought Endgame was hot trash?
Yeah, I really do. It was rushed.
Yeah. Oh, all right. So the second act felt very rushed. Yeah. All right. I'll agree with that.
I mean, you didn't have any time to really just kind of breathe and take it in, and it honestly it kind of felt like Rise of Skywalker.
Ooh, ow.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. Well, there it is.
I'm not saying this is the same opinion I have about Rise of Skywalker. It's not a terrible movie. It's just not good Star Wars. Yeah.
Well, all right. Yeah. I mean, for me, Enterprise is at number 6, not because it's bad. And I know Rob and I have both said this statement in the past. I mean, any hour of official Star Trek, that means no fan fiction. Any hour of official Star Trek is better than just about any hour of anything else. So even though we're putting Enterprise wherever we put it, or any of these shows wherever we put them, they're still all great, more or less.
Yeah. I mean, I other than the animated series, which obviously I haven't really even finished, all of this, I will sit down and watch just for the hell of it on a regular basis.
Yeah, same. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so me putting Enterprise in number 6, I'm not really knocking it. I love it. And I think, so many of the characters are great in it. Trip was an awesome character.
I love Trip. He is my favorite character in the whole entire series.
Yeah, especially for, even just from frankly, I'll just say this, for Star Trek to not make fun of Southern people like every other show on planet Earth does.
Right.
Was one of the most forward-looking things, and I appreciated the fuck out of that, even though, I'm a Jew, I'm a Northern boy as much as anything. But it's just, I thought that was very well done, and something that actually recent fan fiction, Star Trek fan fiction, like Lower Decks, has backpedaled on, and is really, I think, deplorable. And it just shows, that these people don't get Star Trek anymore.
Yeah.
So Trip was great. T'Pol was great. Scott Bakula, I predicted that he'd become a captain in 96. I said that Dr. Sam Beckett should be a starship captain, and it happened, and he was awesome. Enterprise, I get it. Definitely better the more you watch it. Let's go to number 3 for you.
The original series.
I'm trying to not take it as an insult, and
Yeah, and we'll get to it, but I mean, my 1 and 2 are almost interchangeable too.
Sure. Yeah, I can understand that.
And so, I mean, it's all very close.
Okay.
Is what I'm trying to get around to saying.
Well, what puts original series at number 3 instead of like number 1 or 2?
Because 1 and 2 are kind of like what I grew up with.
Okay.
And especially, I mean, and here again, this is kind of spoiling the conversation for later.
Well, let's do it. Why don't we talk about 1 or 2? Let's go to 2.
So I mean, yeah. So number 2 is the Next Generation, and it's almost interchangeable with my number 1, which is Deep Space Nine. And I just think the storytelling in Deep Space Nine is a little bit better. But Next Generation, you understand, for me, it's like going home. That was my family when I was growing up. You know.
I totally know. I mean. I've been, I remember when Next Generation first came on in '87. I was 6, but I can't forget watching Encounter at Farpoint.
And just the dynamic between the chemistry all these characters had, and their interrelationships, and that was such a strong focus of the show. I mean, that really was like formative for me, and my idea of what a family should be like, because in many ways, it was all the things that was kind of lacking in my own real family.
Yeah. Boy, I can hear that too. I mean, and let's be honest, like, especially in the 80s and 90s, and I'm not saying it stopped, but our parents, put us in front of televisions so that they didn't have to babysit us,
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So
and thank God Star Trek was there for us. Not thank God, but I mean, yeah.
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've said that, like, my parents didn't raise me. Fucking Captain Picard raised me. Captain Kirk raised me. And boy, am I glad, because they're far better role models than most of the adults in my life were.
And I just thought of it now, but I mean, there might be just some element too, is that the original series was my dad's favorite, and he loved Captain Kirk. And my dad and I don't have the best relationship, so it might just be lower in the fact that it's still a little bit of rebellion in me against what he liked.
Sure, no, and I can respect that, of course. Yeah, I mean, so I hear you that it's family. I really get that. I mean, give Deep Space Nine being at number 1, like, what differentiates that? And I know you said they could be interchangeable, but like, what differentiates that one for you? It is different Star Trek than any other Star Trek, no doubt about that.
Yeah, I just think the in terms of the writing, it's top notch.
Yes.
The stories that it tells, the places it's willing to go in terms of social commentary, it goes farther than I think any Star Trek has gone before or since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and it would get dark, and it portrayed a less utopian future than Roddenberry had envisioned.
But I mean, there was always that element. I mean, like, as dark as it got, like here again, there was kind of like that family element, and just that sense that things were going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when Voyager got dark, they're all out on their own in the middle of the Beta Quadrant, and they've got nobody to rely on themselves. You don't have Starfleet. Yeah. And so when it got dark, it felt really, really, really dark. Mm-hmm. But when things got dark in Deep Space Nine, it's kind of like you could always see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I can hear that. Yeah, I mean, like, so for me, Deep Space Nine was at number 4, and Next Generation was just under it. And I love both of those shows. I mean, I really, really do. There's a part of me, like, I get it, and I've heard Ira Bear talk about how he thought Roddenberry's idea, like that technology would solve everything, was ridiculous. And, and like, no, things are going to go wrong. They always do. And I get that. I understand that realism that he wanted to bring. I thought Sisko overall was a good character. I think Deep Space Nine for me is actually way more about the background characters than it is about the foreground characters.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
some of my favorite characters are like Nog.
Right. Or
You
frankly,
know?
and yeah, like, and I like the character of Bashir, but look, Morn is a better character than Dr. Bashir. But I say that respectfully. Like, I just love that. Like, there's this running joke on the station about Morn that anybody can get, you know, and it's like, it's the character that's there, but not, and it's brilliant. I don't know any other show that really has quite a character like Morn. And I'm not being like sarcastic about that. I'm dead serious. I love that. But yeah, Section 31. I mean, Garrick. There's just so many. There's so many amazing things.
And as much as I love Deanna Troi and Dr. Crusher, I think the female characters on Next Generation are just a tier higher. I think Kira and Dax.
Oh, on Deep Space Nine, that they're a tier higher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree. No, I agree with you. I think like Dax is a ton of fun. One of my favorite moments in Star Trek is when her and Worf are coming into sick bay. It looked like they just, went through a battle or something, but it wasn't a war.
Yeah. That was a different kind of war.
It was a different kind. Yeah. There's some advanced Klingon calisthenics right there. And Bashir's just like, "Whoa, what happened to you two?" Like, well, we, man, that was good shit. So look, I love Deep Space Nine. Like, I get it. For me, kind of how you said that. And this isn't like even on the same plane, admittedly, but how you said with the original series, that there might be some rebellion in you because that was like your dad's favorite, right? Mm-hmm. For me, I actually hold against Deep Space Nine. To this day, I still think that it became more, but it started out with Paramount copying Babylon 5.
Right.
Out.
And I get that. I do understand it. And
in fact,
I feel bad because I still like Deep Space Nine more than I like Babylon 5. And sure. I'm sorry. But but I get it. I totally get it. And I don't disagree with you.
Well, I want to read a tweet, and this is a tweet just from a few days ago from J. Michael Straczynski, the creator of Babylon 5.
It was a great account to follow on Twitter if you are on Twitter.
Yes, right. So this is hilarious what he said. He was responding to somebody or was retweeting somebody, but he says this. He says, "If you're going to take something I've written and rewrite it in a less interesting or original way, you should probably put a 9 behind the title." Someone said that to me and I fell over, man. So there's that. So I just, again, Deep Space Nine really did become so much more. It became an original property. I'm not going to say that it didn't, but I've really held that against that for a long time. Yeah. So for me, as far as why is the original series number one, I guess I should say that as well. I know there are people who say that it feels dated. I feel quite the opposite. I still think that show, while it doesn't hold up overall, as well as like if you watch The Next Generation from like season 3 up today, it looks as modern as it did in 95, or it looks as futuristic even as it did in 95. I mean, it plays like it was yesterday, the original series does not have that luxury, I'll admit. But overall, I feel like the original series explored such bigger ideas. Like, I get the appeal to the family nature of The Next Generation, and it's there. But like the original series was just, I feel like it was rocking on a whole other scale. Like, I mean, when you're dealing with the space amoeba, like I think one of the most brilliant ideas just ever put to paper was when McCoy says in the episode with the giant space amoeba, he's like, what if our whole purpose in life is that we're just the immune system of the universe? And like, that's just a crazy idea. Crazy ideas you might get in like season 1 and 2 of The Next Generation, but that were almost a norm in the original series. And part of that, granted, is because you were getting the gods of the golden age of science fiction writing those episodes, for the original series. But I loved the scale that show was playing on. And I don't know, there was a time where like it could have been a toss up, like the original series wouldn't have been as high. Frankly, like Star Trek Picard, like really, really, really soured the Next Generation for me, because now I can't watch, and I'm watching the Next Generation right now. Ellen and I are, we're doing a rewatch of it, and I can't see Picard without thinking about how much Patrick Stewart screwed the pooch, with the most recent series or fan fiction. And that's just, I hate it that I'm doing that, but I can't help it because Picard was that horrible. Go ahead.
I can't let myself to do that. I mean, and I'm sorry that's your reaction. I really am. I'm sorry. It's terrible. And I don't blame you for feeling that way at all.
Yeah. I mean, I hate it because like the Next Generation is really is such a perfect show. Like it's so perfect. And
I mean, I say this to this very day that All Good Things is perhaps the greatest season finale of any show ever, period.
Yep. Yeah, I wouldn't argue much against that. I mean, it really is a perfect show. And I even look, folks, I even like season 1 and 2. I really do. I loved what they were doing. Some of the stuff in that, and some of the things, there were some of the best quotes of the series ever come from those 2 seasons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where Roddenberry had the most influence, was on the first 2 seasons.
Precisely. I mean, that's the other part that's changed for me too, is my understanding, like as I got older, like the more I've come to understand with research and everything of, what of Star Trek was Roddenberry and what wasn't. And not that I like put Roddenberry on some kind of crazy pedestal, but he's on a bit of a pedestal. And I think he had some really brilliant ideas. I think he had some batshit ideas too, but I think he had some really brilliant stuff that is rare for anyone in the entertainment industry. And so that's kind of changed things for me as well.
I mean, this kind of comes back to what we were talking about with, having visionaries in charge. And understand, I don't put George Lucas on a pedestal either, but maybe a little. Okay, yeah. maybe a little. Yeah, but I mean, it's not like I worship the guy.
Right.
I recognize that the man has faults, just like we all do. Same thing with Roddenberry, and I'm sure Filoni too. But he's very guarded about his person. So I can understand, considering what happened to both Roddenberry and Lucas in terms of their public exposure.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I mean, it's the money thing.
yeah.
I really think it got to a point where Roddenberry really didn't care about the money anymore. And it was all about, he just really wanted to preach. Now, while I don't want Star Wars to preach to me, and I just kind of want it to entertain me, I do want Star Trek to preach to me, right? Because I mean, it is like, it became that platform of ideas. Like that's been a major part of Star Trek's strength.
Well, that's the thing too, is that, I mean, that's a very unique kind of preaching too, where you're creating a platform of ideas rather than telling you this is how you should live.
Yes. Right. I mean, they definitely, and Star Trek had plenty of,
it's not the Bible.
No, right. It's not. I mean, there's plenty of episodes where they wouldn't have an answer, right? Like a private little war. Yeah. You get no answer.
That's one of the reasons why I love the pilot, or well, not the pilot, the first episode of Beats My Mind, because they set that down, that it's what we don't know that in many ways defines us, and it's that exploration, not just for answers, but new questions.
For new questions. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I need, or I want that content out there that is willing to preach, that is willing to sermonize. And I mean, certainly modern Star Trek is not that. Like recent Star Trek is not that at all. And it's okay even if I disagreed with it. Or no, you know what? I think a lot of people think that modern Star Trek is preaching, and like that it's
I was going to say,
agenda.
I think it's preaching in a very shallow sort of way.
Yes, right. It's just it's a trendy preaching. It's not like year 1 million kind of preaching.
Yeah, you're playing to the choir. You're not,
Exactly.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you you're totally right. So I want that like really far-fetched, like thinking or the really forward thinking. And that's not there anymore. So I guess just to kind of bring it all in, I mean, Star Trek overall does that. The original series, I feel like, did it the most. And so it puts it at my top. But I mean, I'll admit, like drama and story execution and everything else, I mean, Deep Space Nine probably beats them all. And that sense of family. Oh yeah. I mean, you felt that family from when you're watching TV to when you went to the Star Trek conventions at that time,
right.
When those shows were still running.
Yeah.
You felt like my parents, rarely let me out of their sight. But when I went to a Star Trek convention, yeah, go. You'll be fine.
and of course now more than ever, I miss that.
Yes, me too.
Like I haven't been to a Star Trek convention in years, and after the year that we've had, I'm kind of like, this is like, I'd really like to go to a Star Trek convention, and not just some like officially organized Star Trek convention, but sort of just like the smaller scale, down home sort of Star Trek conventions that people just put together on their own back in the days that don't seem to happen anymore. Everything has to be, everything has to be filtered now through some, bigger organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I want to see like the fold out tables with the cheap little pins that are replicating what's the ones from the pins or the insignia from Star Trek 2. And yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I do. I miss that as well. Because it's funny, like we never argued. Like, I mean, we're having fun having this conversation, what our favorite TV series and everything are, but like we never argued like people argue today. Holy hell.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
Over the minutia and everything. I mean, there'd be, okay, well, did this do this? But not like,
well, yeah. I mean, there was always there's a reason why the nitpickers guides to Star Trek exists.
Right.
I mean, it's because
right.
There's an element in all of us, but we have fun doing that. It's not an adversary or antagonistic, conversation that we have.
Right. It's not like, I mean, because here's the problem is like now you have Star Trek and Star Wars. And I mean, I guess to some degree we might engage in that ourselves here and there, but like now the fandoms, like now what's at stake isn't, okay, how much energy does the Bussard collector actually collect? Now this is the downfall of civilization, like.
Right.
Like we're actually arguing about whether or not, the United States is going to collapse based upon how good Star Trek is. Like that seems to be the way these arguments go now. And wow, it makes you want to be a Mission Impossible fan because Mission Impossible fans never argue about shit, but their franchise is huge. And there's tons of history. And it was a damn good show. But I don't know. It blows my mind. So anyway, there's our top lists. There's our Star Trek rankings. Really, all of them are great. I think we both agree on that. But as far as I totally agree with you on that family thing. It's there, and it's a world you want to live in. That's
that's really
such a rare thing. Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways it's kind of it's both what Brian and I have looked for all of our lives, and it's something that we see in one another.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it was something that a lot of people, I think, were seeing in it because, in fact, I know I recorded an episode at some point where I was reading from an essay at the back of the original printing of the Marvel comic book, comic bookization, graphic novelization of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So this is from 1979. And like the last words of this essay, it was saying, we need Star Trek because it represents our salvation. And, like as a species, like it's showing us, guess what? We can get past all this bullshit,
Yeah. In fact, I remember I gave that to you as a birthday present.
Yes. So, so this is I get it that this is like for some, it is a very serious thing. At the same time, like, I don't think that how Star Trek is, somehow going to decide, what wars get won or fought. But yeah, it's a place you wanted to be. And well, anyway, it's a shame that legacy isn't continuing today. And that's all you can really say about it. It's just a shame that it's not continuing anymore.
Well, we continue the legacy here on this show.
That's true. That's true. It's certainly a light we're still carrying. As I always say, I'm a short-term pessimist, but I'm a long-term optimist. And we'll get there. Or at least some will be able to, we'll get there. So,
the current iteration of Star Trek is not the last.
No, that's going to die. That'll fade away, in 100 years from now, who knows, same with Star Wars, frankly.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. That's something, it's weird. It's something that, with ever since the sale of Star Wars to Disney, it's something I've had to actually, be cognizant of and process, is that there's going to be Star Wars stories that I'll never see.
Well, maybe you'll get to see him, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Well, it bothers me. We can end off with this unless you have more you want to get out. I think we mentioned it earlier. The Amazon purchasing of MGM. Like, they own Stargate now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll probably do an episode about this or something, but like, the terms of that agreement basically said that, they plan on repurposing the properties of MGM. And I'm like, so basically you're going to remake everything. And I'm like, we don't need Stargate remade. Okay. Like, just continue that greatness. And Rob's just falling over. What do you got?
The thing of shame is like we've come close to a new Stargate several times.
Yes.
In the last decade.
Yeah.
And it's always fallen apart.
Yep.
And it seems like this is the case again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe, Bezos didn't care about the money with The Expanse, the only other good show on TV.
Yeah.
So who knows? But anyway, there's Star Trek. If you haven't watched all that action, man, are you in for a great time? Because I guarantee you all of that holds up just as well. I said Next Generation holds up. No, all of it holds up just as well today as it did when it originally aired. And there's still so much to glean and learn and take away from, really intellectual television. That just played on another level.
We both highly recommend everything that's on this list.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's nothing here I'm going to tell you, no, that's not worth your time. Absolutely.
Bingo. You got it. That's it. And I think that's probably the best note to end on. So, all right, Rob, we, a
pleasure as always.
Yes, it is. And, we'll see, how the chain codes go until next time. We'll see all of you on the other side.